All right. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Service Strategy Labs with Roy Dockery and Neuron 7. First, introduce myself. My name is Roy Dockery. I'll be your host for the series, and I'm a business consultant. Leadership, operational excellence, and problem identification. So, as an industry leader, I'm here just to kind of help facilitate these conversations and bring some things out. And we're joined by Nikin Patel from Neuron 7. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Nikin.
Thanks, Troy. Excited about doing this and starting off the series with you. So, Nikan Patel, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Neuron 7. Have been in the industry on the other side, on the technology side, working with a lot of practitioners like yourself over the years. So, 20 plus years of being in the customer experience field service industry. Most of our careers, most of our companies have been in this space, and we're super excited about what we're doing at Neuron 7, impacting the world of service and the entire service continuum using our technology and AI. So that's the background about Neuron 7 and me.
All right. Thanks, Nikin. And so today we're gonna try to keep this conversational. Everyone who knows me is I kind of hate PowerPoint presentations. So we'll keep those to a minimum and just have a conversation. As we go through, if anyone has a question in the chat, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll have a couple of polls later in the discussion as well, and just have a conversation. So primarily, what we want to talk about though is this topic of resolution intelligence, right? We really want to figure out what does this mean as a category? How is it going to impact service and support, whether that's technical support, remote support, or field service? So what we'll walk through is we'll define the category, we'll talk about some service challenges, and then ultimately we'll kind of pinpoint a north star, a direction, and kind of what's important in this space that we should focus on as practitioners and as well as solution providers. So, like I said, we'll be talking about service resolution intelligence. And as we kind of dig into that, Nikin, what is service resolution intelligence? Why is it important? Why is this something that we need to know as service leaders in the field?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, this has been the last 4.5 years of my life. Resolution intelligence is something that is at the heart of service. It should exist as a category, and what it really is it's predicting. If you think about creation of an incident or a case or a work order, the entire world of service exists for one thing: is to resolve a customer issue or a machine issue very quickly, right? So resolutions and resolving tickets and resolving work orders and resolving incidents is at the heart of service, right? And that is exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to go in and go to the heart of the service, take the hardest problem in the AI world, which is predicting the actual resolution pathway itself, not the periphery of service, and do that. And the real reason why is, I mean, if you take a step back, Roy, and if you think about it, after a case is created or after a work order is created, in the world that we live today, that's when the human mind kicks in, right? The
Yeah.
person at the other end is going in and looking at multiple sources of data to say, hey, where do I find the resolution to something? They go in and call the network. Okay, this is not a network issue. They go in and call the best person that they think knows this particular issue. 82% of the time, somebody calls somebody else, right? Whoever is the expert, in my view, on this particular product for this particular issues I'm trying to get help from. I'm going through a plethora of manuals and so on and so forth. But this entire process of intelligently, triaging and then resolving is never captured in the enterprise, right? After that save button, whether it's a Salesforce or a ServiceNow, all of this happens thousands of times by the hour in large complex service environments in the human's mind. And that is what we are trying to capture, where I've ruled out the network, I've ruled out the power supply, I've ruled out hardware, and now I'm focusing on software and firmware as potentially the path forward. And
Yeah.
how am I going to go take these steps to solve it? If we can somehow elegantly capture this process, now there is a way to capture, cleanse, guide at scale. And so, what resolution intelligence really, what Neuron 7 is trying to do, is trying to create a single resolution hub across the enterprise which you can dip in, and then what comes out is the prediction of the actual resolution pathway, right? And if
Yeah.
you're able to get that to 80-90% accuracy, then game over. You are at the heart of service, where across, let's say you have 1,000 products and the, 50,000 issues and malfunctions, which is my favorite math. For each and every one of those 50,000 issues, I can give you the actual resolution pathway, and that impacts everything, right? So if you think about first time fix, and if you think about employee satisfaction, if you think about onboarding, parts wastage, just having accurate resolution pathways at scale can impact everything, and it's the heart of service.
Yeah, no, and I love the way that you phrase that, because if we look at this, right, there's lots of iceberg depictions that you see on the internet, right? But like kind of what you were describing is we've got this little bit of information that's actually being captured at the top, right? Like either by the technician putting it in on their mobile device, their tablet, or something else. Or but then you have everything else that's being done. It's the phone calls, the text messages, the Slack messages, the Teams messages, and then looking through stuff, pulling up videos, right? Looking at old manuals, and so that's official documentation from engineering, but it's also unofficial information, right, from the senior technician, from the person who just knows the information best. So that's an interesting thing, and like you said, because when we look at it, and and the statistics, we mentioned percentages, but like Salesforce with their state of service, like 82% of people expect a complex problem to be solved by one person, right? So the more information that we can get to a technician to empower them, right, to provide that resolution, the better that they look, the better the experience for the customer. And obviously it's expected, but and we keep hinging and we talk about this word complex. Like the reason that's more complicated is the more complex the system is, the more potentials you have for a solution,
Yeah,
right? Coming from pharmacy robotics, autonomous mobile, robots, and automated guided vehicles, and things that work on X, Y, and Z axes and alignments, and all of that other stuff. Like you can look at a problem and there's 10 potential ways to fix it, and
yeah,
none of them are really wrong. They're all possible
right.
solutions, but you didn't really, and back in the day, I feel old now, right? Like you just had to figure it out, right? You didn't have something that could kind of guide you step by step to say, there are 10 paths to go down, but the two most likely are here, start here,
That's
right? And so getting into that, I think, is very helpful. And so you talk about kind of this like resolution hub, and trying to get to accuracy. So like, I'll pull up something here. Like when you all like kind of talk about the resolution hub, and I'll make it bigger for everybody that's looking now, kind of offering like turn by turn guidance and faster resolution. Like how does AI, right? Like AI is getting thrown around now for everything. We use AI to book flights. We use we use AI to do everything. Um, but the genuine question I guess I have for you is, why is AI needed for this? And
yeah,
and is it AI? Is it generative AI? Because I want to make sure we differentiate now in language, because those are two different things. So
yeah.
why is that needed, to be, why does this need to be powered by AI?
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent question. So I think, take a step back and look at the world before Neuron 7 and after Neuron 7 for a second. I think the issue with the current state of thinking, or what I was part of for 20 years, is people think about resolutions as a search problem, right? As soon as they think about resolving cases, they're like, okay, this is about going into a manual or a KB article and finding the right answer, right?
Yes.
And there is two issues with this way of thinking. One, scale. The second is accuracy.
Yeah.
The dirty secret of our industry is that nobody goes and deletes thousands of KB articles every single day. Nobody can go, because they are getting stale every single day, every single morning when you go to work, right? A lot of your KB articles and manuals are getting stale because the new version of the product came in. 30% of your manual is defunct now. Nobody can go in and go into a manual or go into a KB article or hundreds of them and change it all the time. So
Yeah.
you have one imperfect solution, and then you put keyword-based search on it. So it's imperfection sitting on top of imperfection. And whether it's KCS or whatever, I absolutely am a believer and a practitioner. But I think it's time to now go in and upgrade our thinking, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
and say, hey, I'm going to go use KCS, but I'm going to use KCS in the world of AI. The reason why, there's very good reasons why the old world of thinking and just thinking about resolutions as a search problem didn't work. But there's a lot of things coming together, Roy, that really makes this possible. Like you said, if I have 100,000 issues at scale, and every issue which is complex, has multiple pathways to solve it. Hey, there's multiple ways to solve this. There's a 7-step process and a 5-step process.
Yeah.
Think about what we are taking on. What Neuron 7 is taking on is the onus to make 90% accuracy happen across all 100,000 issues in the entire pathway. We're not saying
Yeah.
we're going to get 2 or 3 of them right. We are saying we're going to get the entire pathway right with our methodology. And the reason why this is AI is because what was not possible before is and what's mind-boggling, what's possible now is the amount of unstructured data processing that we can do at scale and at the accuracy that is needed is incredible, right? It's all that something that came together in the last 4 or 5 years. Even something like, take something as simple in this entire process, something as simple as I'm not doing batch AI or batch processing.
Yeah.
As soon as that issue came in, I have got 2 or 3 seconds to understand that issue, predict the entire pathway. In that 3 seconds, right? I need to understand how much can I enrich this even more? Is there some questions I can ask? What is the resolution pathway? And this at scale processing was not possible in real time without the help of NVIDIA and AMD GPUs, right?
Yeah.
So real time, like, I have somebody inside the elevator shaft who needs this prediction. I have somebody who has a customer on the call. I'm sitting in front of the CT scanner. I need to know what this issue is because this CT scanner needs to be up and running right now, right?
Yeah.
And this real-time AI, without the help of GPUs, without the help of a plethora of open source models that are available, and they're getting better by the day, it's not, there was no way. So think about Neuron 7 as a cocktail of AI, yes, right? That we are borrowing from all these plethora of open source models that are now available. But then
Yes.
there is a lot more into our product that goes into our product. It's an AI first product, but there is a lot of data governance. There is a lot of metadata management. There's also enterprise search features. This 10-step process happens in 3 seconds and it all comes together. And there are years of technology that have gone in where we are today that's all converging to make Neuron 7 happen and possible. Even data management, data governance, we have now matured after 10, 15 years as practitioners to a point where we understand exactly what works and what doesn't. And
Yeah.
so I would say absolutely needs AI because there is no way to do all this processing at scale without it. There is some components of Gen AI and others that have nothing to do with Gen AI. So
Yeah.
the world loves to just say, yeah, this is a Gen AI, put RAG architecture, give it to LLMs, and you should be getting resolutions.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to work beyond the POCs. There are aspects to our product and the use case where Gen AI absolutely is going to be relevant, right? Think about, I can go in and ask a question in French, and the answer may be in a Portuguese document, and I need that real-time translation. I need to summarize things very, very quickly around what's going on in this case that came in on the manual. So there are things where just the idea that we have now taken the entire internet's data and being able to process them, and we are able to go in and put this autocomplete on steroids, as I call LLMs, right? That is
Yeah.
huge. That there is a way to use it, but that's not the only thing. So long answer to your question is multiple technical advances coming together from GPUs to LLMs to AI open source models to data governance is the reason why this is possible now and it was not possible before.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And like, and I'm gonna put up this slide here just so everybody can see it kind of clearly. But when we add in, right, you look at complexity, we look at from an industry perspective, you've got turnover for multiple reasons, people switching industries, retirement, the silver tsunami. But then as you mentioned, the unstructured data and structured data, so many choices. And I think the one thing that AI is allowing people to do, and I love using Chat GPT, right? Even just for my personal use, But I think the combination of AI and Gen AI, it's really what you get out of the question that you ask,
Right.
right? When it's just specific knowledge based search, like even, and I'll give an example. Earlier today, I was trying to find my accountant's email address because my a friend of mine's the CEO of a company needed a referral, right? And here in North
Yeah.
Carolina, and I type in my accountant's name and it doesn't pop up in the search in my inbox. So it's like I know it's in there. Like we did my taxes 2 months ago, but it's almost like I didn't type it in exactly right because the name of his practice, his last name is first versus his first name being last. So
Yeah.
even the fact that it wasn't exact, it wouldn't pull it up in my email app. But when I went to my computer, like my computer could find it because there's more intelligence built into it. So, and I
Absolutely.
think that's the thing when people ask questions on how to solve a problem, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but there's also 12 ways to ask the question to get you to the right information. And I think what that combination of AI and Gen AI does based on patterns and the language models of how other people ask that same question or a similar question, you'll get, you can get results for resolutions that may not be exactly what you said
Yeah.
because that would depend on us always asking the perfect question, which we
Yeah. No,
don't,
I think
right?
you,
So yeah,
you bring up, I'm going to take what you just said and take it one step further, right?
yeah,
And correlate it back. Not just the capability of doing language based search, which is very different than keyword based, like semantic search and stuff like that. But we are also at a point where we can, if you take what you just said one step further, in the enterprise world, there is healthcare and med device specificity. There is network switch and what is circuit pack fail in specificity. We are now able to also go in and create domain specific language and LLMs that make this industry's data work beautifully from the context of what we are trying to do, right?
yes,
And that is also and how quickly you're able to do that and understand the specificity of an industry's language to create these deep domain capabilities is also mind-boggling. Apart from going and going way ahead of keyword based search, so absolutely agree with you.
yeah. So that's we kind of covered like kind of defining the category, right? So now we want to pivot into talking about like some of the problems that we're trying to tackle into that space as well. So what are some of your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in our world, when we thought about what we wanted to go try to solve, this sounded like the right problem. If I want to take a hairy problem at the heart of service to go and solve, this resolution pathway is predicted at scale, resolution intelligence, next likely error. That kind of impacts, we feel, everything in terms of the metrics that our customers care about, right? So if you think about it, it impacts first time fix. It impacts, it helps with first call resolution. Whether you are a 20-year veteran of these products or somebody who's brand new to the company, if both of you get the exact same resolution pathway, now you're leveling up, right? The other question the other day is I was talking to one of the customers and we were going back and forth about, hey, why can't this be just be a search problem and I can just find it in a manual? I had a very simple question. I think, Roy, you and me have spoken about this in the past is how do you capture tribal knowledge or expert knowledge across thousands of experts in your company that know this machine or this equipment inside out? How do you
Yeah,
capture tribal knowledge or expert knowledge on a manual? Right. So I have a beautiful written manual written by the engineer, and now I want to see exactly how cases are being solved on a particular issue. Right. There is no way to kind of go in a manual and capture expert knowledge. Right. So
yeah,
that is the other big thing that we have. We have a very elegant way of capturing thousands of people's, unlocking their mind or digitizing the brain, like we would like to call it, right?
yeah,
And this at scale is an important problem to solve. It's a problem that's worth it, right? In the day and age that we live in. And that's one more. So apart from the metrics that are usual, reducing revisits rates and stuff like that, the faster onboarding and the human side of capturing the knowledge of experts is one big problem that we're and we will give you a report as a customer as to what percentage of your overall tribal knowledge or expert knowledge have we been able to go in and capture within our company, right?
yeah. Okay. And it's yeah, and I mean on my side, just from an industry perspective, when we talk about pain points, right? Like the one thing that we're facing there is that it's just, kind of in general One, how do we retain the information, which you just mentioned, right? Because how do you get the information out of people's brains, like the good solutions, the shortcuts, the things that that aren't there? Because I've been in a situation before as a technician or even as a leader where you're flipping to the back of the book, you go to the troubleshooting tree, and the problem you're trying to solve doesn't even have a starting point in
Yeah,
the troubleshooting tree. So you've got to figure out where to even start in the tree. And so you've got to do some more digging there. But it is, how do you capture that information, or how do you contextualize the information from the people doing the work hands on, and compare that to like the same steps or the same processes that the engineering team or that the people who formally wrote the manual would be expecting, right? And so that's exacerbated by, one, you're losing talent due to either transition, retirement, people going into management, kind of moving up the corporate ladder. But then you wind up facing the problem when people come on board, is how do you get them up to speed, especially when you're talking about complex technology that's been aging over years. And so now I have hundreds and hundreds of devices, if not thousands. I have multiple generations of the same devices. And to your previous point, I've got old knowledge articles that apply to old technology that don't apply to new technology because we fixed the problem with the old technology, right?
yeah,
But they're all there, and it's got the same name if I type it in when I'm trying to look for it. So like that's a huge pain point of trying to navigate. How do you try to, as much as possible, as the leader responsible for training and development of your technicians, like how do I get them 80% of the way there, where I know that they can go out and confidently have the tools that they need to be successful without having an unrealistic, like extremely long ramp up time for a technician, right? Because that's one of the challenges. I need to bring new people in. And what does that look like when I bring them on board, and how long does it take? And I'll pause just for a second. So for the audience that's here, I've got a poll question for you, which is, right now, what is the average training time for a new technician? I kind of only put three categories in there. If everybody just wants to drop a vote real quickly, is your technician training 0 to 3 months? Is it 3 to 6 months? Or is it more than 6 months to get somebody revenue generating, kind of independent, right? We've kind of got those baby steps that we let technicians take sometimes, but what does that look like? And we see the answers coming in now. We're almost at about half. Um, in a few dropping in there, but we seem heavy towards the the longer periods of time. So a couple more seconds. We got some votes there. So it's split, right? We've got 2020. Nope, the more than 6 months. 6 months is winning there, and we've got a clear front runner there. So I'll stop that and then pivot back to that, right? And I think that's one of the things that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into kind of what the ultimate goal should be when we're driving resolution intelligence with AI, but it's clearly a pain point, right? Because we need a new employee. We have a customer that needs to be supported now to the best of someone's ability, but it's going to take us, on average, it looks like 3, maybe 6 to 9 months to actually get somebody trained to where we think they can work independently and they can have the confidence, right? And when I used to train technicians, they would always ask, like, when am I done? And my
yeah,
answer would be, you're done when you're confident enough to break something and fix it,
yeah,
right? So when you can walk into a situation and not only resolve what's there, but also fix the problem that you caused, then you're ready. And that was always variable depending on how well people were able to navigate documentation, what kind of learner they were, right? And then also what experience they brought into the job as well. So we've got kind of the people side of it, right? And then there's some process stuff around training. How do we onboard um, people as well? Like, what do you think are some of those like some is there any more kind of technology pain points that we're running into, that create that problem, whether it's within field service or outside of it, right? Because we've even got to go kind of upstream to where some of this stuff can be shifted left and resolved kind of upstream, so it's not landing at the field. So are there
yeah.
ways that we can leverage resolution intelligence to improve the service experience, but then overall the customer experience, even upstream of a call being dispatched or a truck being rolled?
Yeah, no, I think thanks for summarizing your thoughts. I think because Roy, how you we may have our point of view as a technology company, right? But I think it needs to be incredibly close to how our customers think. And you obviously represent, after all these years, how you stack rank what this solves is super important to us as a company, right?
Yeah.
So that summary really helps. Between the people, process, and technology, from a technology perspective, I think it is absolutely something that goes across all tiers of service. So when we think about a resolution intelligence tool, at the heart of it, it's an insights engine, right? We are going and gleaning insights from the entire company, but it going and getting insights into a single resolution hub, right? We are creating a single service resolution hub in a company, learning from the two best sources of data and from two best sources of intelligence, your data and your people, right? And there is no way to create an accurate hub and make it complete if I'm not learning from all tiers of service. So
Yeah.
not just field service, it could be engineering that gets in the picture to solve certain issues, like, hey, software issues are engineering. It's support that is the first line of support when the customer calls in, or it could be the second line of support that the field service technicians go to. And then there's self-service where customers themselves are able to solve. So if you think about all the tiers of service, starting with self-service to call center and tech support, to the field service and repair organization, to engineering, this entire service continuum, so to speak, we need to learn from this entire service continuum, and we need to provide intelligence and predictions to this entire service continuum. So no, absolutely, the starting point itself will fail if we are learning only from one group, right? The,
Yes.
the, the vision will be shortened, if you will, if we are just siloed into a particular, and our customers are completely bought into this. Like we see routinely our customers saying, now that you made us successful and I see this working, the accuracy being there in one tier, they absolutely want us to now go in. They kind of understand the whole resolution hub coming together across tiers of service. And that's not a trivial technology problem to solve, by the way, right? So
Yeah.
while we're always keeping in mind practitioners like you and how you stack rank the benefits that come out of it. When we started the company, Roy, we didn't think about expert knowledge capture. We were always focused. We are technicians. We focus on accuracy and analytics and insights, and
Yeah.
we're going to create an insight engine, and we're going to blow up the whole world of knowledge, and we're going to start doing that. But the idea, once we start working closely with customers, we're like, wow, this is a huge problem where if I can focus on the people and what they know and capture that at scale, I'm in the business of generating knowledge, right, for the
Yes.
company and standardizing it, not just finding knowledge which may be stale, right?
Yeah.
That changed the perspective once we work with enough folks like you.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, right? Because, written knowledge, does stagnate, right? Like it stays there as the technology evolves. But the cool thing about getting input from all of those different phases is, one, in the fields, you have different levels of expertise.
Yeah,
On the phone, you have different levels of expertise, and with customers, you have different level of comfort, confidence, and expertise. But like as the resolutions start getting built downstream, and I would assume like as the technology starts to learn it, right? Like and I know this is some of the proof of concept, right? Like, can I hand this to a junior technician and they get to the kind of resolution a senior technician would? But then the same thing would apply to, can I hand this to a new tech support agent and almost they could get me to the same resolution that a senior field technician could? Not
yeah,
even just tech support, right? Because all of that is being fed into the same system. And then as you go back up, and the smarter that the system becomes at interpreting your question, you could even have a customer that may be hands on but doesn't know how to accurately describe the problem, that's now getting taken down a resolution path that would almost be equivalent to a technician, but it's just it led the technician led the customer down that path as well, right? So the more intelligence that the system gains, even to the right or at the hands-on level of a technician, regardless of their seniority, as the system learns, it actually moves left, right?
yeah,
And it gets to the point to where, a technical person like me, I hate having to go, like, I want the technician solution to the problem
Yeah.
not the customer's solution to the problem, but I can't get to it. Like
Yeah.
that information just isn't available. It's behind a paywall. It's on the other side of a secret diagnostic menu, right? That I can't unlock on my TV or my appliances. But I think that's the great thing about resolution intelligence, because basically anybody willing to ask the question,
Yeah.
you can provide them and ask the question, and they have the comfort and the confidence to move forward with those turn by turn directions. It'll
Yeah.
kind of lead them to that, right? So I think that's what it would help drive adoption and just value across the entire chain, from like tier 0 all the way up to tier 3. Because the same thing, engineering could answer a question just
Right.
because it missed everybody else, but now that's a part of the intelligence, and now a tech support agent or a technician can basically provide the same solution that previously required like a tier 3 impact. So we've talked a lot about the technology and the problems, but and the one thing that's kind of been consistent behind that has been the people part
Yeah.
of it, right? So as we talk about like your goal, and like you said, 4.5 years now you've been diving into this, like as you've talked to different customers and practitioners and partners, like what's kind of stood out to you as like that north star of what you need to focus on to make sure you're building something that's successful in the long run?
Yeah, I think there's no question in my mind now after all these years, and we must have processed data from probably 150 out of the Fortune 1000 companies out there and spoken to so many service leaders like yourself. My North Star is the service engineer who's got a boatload of experience on this particular product or device or what have you, the network switch engineer who's fixing something. Does that person, after all these years of knowing these products, still find Neuron 7 valuable? Right? Can
Yes.
I add value to somebody who's been a lifelong service technician for a particular product or service or this particular industry? And I think if I can do that, and I can do that at scale, then that is our by far our North Star. It's not the economic bar. Of course, the economic bar who signs our check and who buys it, they're going out on a limb and going into this new world of thinking bravely, right? So that
Yes.
person is always a customer. But I don't think, and Roy, if I go back to your world, if you have 500 field service agents and support engineers, your entire service continuum is there. A couple of hundred come to you and say, "This Neuron 7 thing is awesome. It's really helping me. I don't need to keep everything in my head. It's accurate. It's scaling." Even though I know my job and products, there's always a big long tail of issues that happen once in a while, and it still helps me there, right? It
Yeah.
absolutely helps the new technicians. And the other way around, if they come in and say, "I'm not using this," right? It's difficult for you as a leader to then force it down their throat, if you will.
Yep.
So I think that's our North Star, the value creation, and we know that that comes from accuracy. And the other one is at the economic buyer, the VP that trusts us with the project, if you will. Am I helping? Is Neuron 7 helping drive bottoms up all the metrics, right? Number of revisits are coming down, parts wastage is coming down. In the tech support world, first call resolution is huge. Even the customer experience, like, hey, there is a telecom engineer with a SAV1 issue, going in and raising a ticket, and are they able to go in and do that themselves? There is no human involved there. In the self-service mode, when you shift left and having that issue solved very quickly, and the fingertips they have the answer, that drives customer experience at scale. So I think it's really the experience of the person, the technician, and the metrics is our North Star.
Yeah, no, and I love what you in the it's metrics, and we as VPs and executives, we love talking about metrics, right? But
Yeah.
most of our customers don't care about metrics. Most of the technicians don't care about metrics. The one thing that you mentioned though was the experience, right? Like the customer experience and the technician experience. Like, are you adding value to the
Yeah.
technician, right? We might be adding efficiency, we might be automating, we might be onboarding quicker. None of that is really that tangible to the technician, right? Like whether I got 3 months worth of training or 6 months worth of training, I was still getting paid and it's a new job. Right. But from a value perspective, like I like what you talked about. And I mean, we've got one slide here that's when you talk about like a team being empowered, right? Like, and empowerment's going to show by who uses it,
Yes.
right? Like who's using the technology. Because like you said, if you mandate it, you're going to get use with no value.
Yeah.
So they'll use it, but you're not going to see a lot of engagement, right? You're not going to see a lot of happy campers, right? It's another manual mandated thing that you put on top of my existing job.
Yeah.
But it's also how do you, you mentioned, I see here with Translogic, you guys are building out the N7 champions, where it's like not only do you want to highlight value, but you also want to recognize and tangibly kind of identify like who's adding value to the platform, right? Who's helping with resolution, who's helping drive accuracy, knowledge article contribution, and all of this things, all these things as well. Because when you talk about large organizations and how do you add value to people who are very different, right? Like
Yeah.
people are uniquely made. So like the way that everyone's going to use the app is going to be a bit different. The way that they're like the problems that they do ask. Because when you talk about experience, right? Everyone says experience is the best teacher. So your experienced technicians aren't going to look up a solution for the stuff that they fixed 1,000 times, but the new product that was just released or that may have been released 2 years ago but didn't come into their market
Yeah.
until this month. Now I've got a history of service cases, unstructured data, and structured data that blended together can leverage your experience so you know a decent question to ask about
Yeah.
how to solve the problem, and then we can lead you turn by turn through that. And once they know that, again, now they've experienced it, they've kind of internalized that intelligence and it's been added to their brain, and then they find value in it, right? And then they keep using it to kind of learn themselves as well. So I think that's good. And you talked about like on the metric side, right? Like what that leads to. So, when you have that, and you if you want to talk through some of these things here, like, and I like this one because you kind of highlight, I see call handle times and resolution, which means you're talking about one step left, which is technical support, as well as some of the benefits to field service. So you just want to talk on a little bit more on some of these improvements to resolution and how they got them.
Yeah, one of the things that we do at scale is our customer success team gets paid on achieving metrics on behalf of the person who buys, right? The product. So they are completely tied at the hip throughout the journey with Neuron7. Let's say you have a 3-year contract, they are tied at the hip with our end user and person who is driving this in terms of achieving these things, right? So there's a lot of motivation to do that. But I think about the world that we are in from a service perspective. It's very difficult to find talent, right? There is
Yes.
a lot of people going through retirements. It's happening in every single industry, whether I take appliances or I take network switches or I take med device or industrial equipment. It's just standard. Right? People cannot find trained technicians, and the people who are there bowing down are leaving. In that scenario, I think it's super important not just to give them a tool that they want to use that is going to add value, is going to add to the accuracy, but we're killing multiple birds with one stone there, right? One, we are adding value to the person, right? We're
Yeah.
capturing the expert knowledge while they're using the tool, right? We're also going in and doing this so that bottoms up, you are able to impact all of the metrics that you see out here in terms of faster resolution and call handle time and so on and so forth. So we have designed the product and our approach in a way that we can achieve all three of these things together,
Yeah.
while always keeping in mind user adoption, because the huge silver line here in the AI world is the more your technicians adopt the product at scale, right? The more the AI is learning from it, the more the AI learns from it, the more accurate it gets. The more accurate it gets, it drives user adoption. So it's a virtuous cycle that gets created from user adoption to AI learning to AI accuracy back to user adoption.
Yes.
Because from your perspective, nobody, like you and me went from Yahoo to Google at some point in time on the search engine, right? We put
Yes.
in 20 queries and they were accurate more in one search engine versus the other. And as soon as you have that something that is accurate and it's providing value, you're adopting it more. Nobody's
Yep.
going to put in the 21st query if 20 queries were wrong, right? So there is no fog in our brain. We know that we are in the accuracy game. We know that at the end of the day, that is what we want to provide from a technology perspective to our users. And if we do that, and if we add value to them, then it is going to absolutely get adopted. But what should not get lost is this problem to solve at scale is not a trivial problem, because Roy, this is sitting at the heart of multiple different things, cases and manuals and videos, and the insights, or the signal lies somewhere between all of these different silos, different data formats and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
extracting accuracy is super important, but it comes at some very, very, very high technical powers to kind of get that done, right?
Yeah, no, and I like the way, I mean, like you said, accuracy does take a lot. It's kind of like to take because you're trying to take the guesswork out of it, right? Like you don't want the people doing all the work and then upvoting and downvoting which one worked best. You actually want to present them the best one and not build a system based on like weighted assumptions of who said what was the best answer. But I think one thing that you touched on, and and again, as a practitioner of service, right? Like, um, the idea of, and something that we started to implement even years ago before the advent of AI, is like, okay, what's the least I can actually train somebody on and then send them into the field,
Yeah,
right? Because I realize we're trying to train people for every situation, and a lot of that is wasted time, right?
yeah,
I'm going to have you touch every piece of equipment. I'm going to try to train you on every eventuality. You're not going to see them for 6 months. You're going to forget half of this stuff if you learn it and don't apply it within 72 to 96 hours. You forget it. So when I teach you everything in the course of 6 weeks, by the time we're at the end, you actually forgot most of what you learned in the first month because you haven't applied it,
yeah,
because knowledge unapplied doesn't become wisdom that we can take with us, right? So,
fantastic.
I love the idea, like you said, is that circle feeds itself. I mean, I think companies could actually start to learn and understand to say, hey, this is actually the base. I don't even need to train people to 80%, right?
Yeah,
I can train people to 60% or
yeah,
40%, and then make sure that they've got core, safety concerns, technical concerns. They understand our software, some things that are proprietary. But then if I have a tool that gives them turn by turn guidance to resolution that is 90+% accurate, I don't have to invest so much in them up front because
yeah,
I've already invested in people utilizing the tool that'll help provide them the answer and lead them in the right direction. Because we already did one poll, right, that showed that we're we're 6 to 9 months or more from a training perspective, but you have to add to that the amount of time it actually takes to onboard a new technician. So as we kind of walk to close out real quick, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw one more poll up, for everybody that's still with us. Like, our audiences remain consistent. Like, when it comes to like, do you struggle to find skilled talent for service support roles? Is it, and I'll and that, thank you. My lab assistant started the poll for me. Is that across all markets? Is it certain geographies, or is that not an issue for you when it even just finding the talent even before we get to the point that we need to get them trained up? So I see the votes coming in. Thank you for my wonderful lab assistant in the background helping her to run everything as well, because I've got 5 screens in front of me. So we're heavy on it being a national or international, just depending on what our audience is. Some are restricted to a couple of particular geographies. But I think the one thing that's leading right now is no one's saying that recruiting and bringing on skilled talent is not an issue right now. So it is an issue that everyone's facing, and it looks like it's a prevalent issue across the vast majority of markets, right? So, I'll stop that right there and kind of pull that back, because I think that's an interesting thing. So when you add, right, if I can reduce the training time,
yeah,
that also means I can minimize, or I can actually change the requirements, right? Because that lead time of training up a technician is still me hiring people that I think have all the skills that I need. That I'm
yeah,
hiring these highly skilled, trained technical people. But if I actually have some intelligence that I can let them borrow so that they can gain the experience, maybe I can hire people with less experience on
right,
paper who have the skills and the aptitude, right? And that can cut down, and we did that at Swisslog when I was there, right? And it cut down on that time. We didn't have issues recruiting in any markets. And then we just had to invest in, finding different ways to get them that experience to bring them up to speed. So my last question before we pivot to some Q&A, for you, and anybody who has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we've got somebody that'll moderate and pull them up. Like, when we're introducing yet another thing to technicians, right? The technicians have already suffered the digital transformation in the age of IoT, and now we're leaning towards AI and everything. Like,
Yeah.
how can we introduce this to technicians, keeping the value and the adoption high for them? How do we make this as streamlined as possible for techs introducing resolution intelligence?
Yeah, that's something that we have proactively from day one, and thank God we got it right from an architecture perspective. We said we're not going to have a standalone silo called Neuron 7, right? We've experienced enough in the industry where there is a lot of call center, there's a lot of technicians that already have 6 7 things to do look at. Here's one more silo called Neuron 7 would never work. So we were adamant that we will serve our predictions within the day in a life of a service engineer within whatever tool that they use day in and day out. So if you are on the mobile and you use ServiceNow for incidents, or you use Salesforce, or you use Microsoft or SAP or homegrown systems or ServiceMax, doesn't matter. We will ensure that Neuron 7 seamlessly sits within this workflow. And it takes a lot of investments, right? Roy, at our end, that is not a trivial task. If you think about it, all of these systems of records, like the system of record for case management or work order management, which is Salesforce or ServiceNow, they keep on coming up with the multiple versions on a quarterly basis.
Yes.
Beyond 7 does. We have a major release a quarter and a minor release every single month. The amount of innovation we are bringing is mind boggling. And we need to keep all of these things in sync constantly. And we do all of this investment and work. Why? Just for one reason only, is to ensure that we can make the service engineer's life super easy by serving this up in their daily life, right? So if I do it accurately, which helps adoption, like we spoke about earlier, if I
Yes.
can do it within the daily life, then I am making this. We're thinking about it constantly with our North Star of the service technician mind, and then on top of it, just to give you some context, we got to do it across multitude of different applications. Like there is a Fortune 1000 company has an incredible number of applications, right? The old world of cloud with SaaS, best of breed, created even more silos, right? I have
Yeah.
something for field service, and then I have something for incentive comp, and then I have something like, so there is even more silos. And within a Fortune 1000 company, Europe may be using Microsoft for field service. Germany has its own homegrown system. The rest of Europe is on something else. US is on something else. SAP has all your parts, right? And we are now saying we're going to go work seamlessly, and we have to, because that single resolution hub, Roy, if I'm an international company, I want to
Yeah.
learn from my Japanese counterparts, from Germany, from India and China, and take advantage of that in the US and vice versa. In fact, not only do I want to learn it from that in batch mode, I want to do it real time. When Japan wakes up and sees an issue, and then Germany sees that same issue, by the time the US wakes up and sees that issue, Neuron 7 should have learned about that issue and be ready with the resolution, right? So there's a
Yeah.
real time aspect to it. And for us to be able to for us to be at a point where we can make that happen and possible, we have to have technology that goes across all of these different applications, ingest stuff from it, and then gives predictions within any of the. So we are an API based intelligence tool that can be called within any application that supports API. It could be a portal, could be your mobile applications, could be all the majors that you see on the screen here.
Yeah.
And that work that we have done is a huge benefit where our customers don't need to worry about taking a 6 months data ingestion, cleansing, consolidation process so that they can then put in predictions, right?
Yeah.
You're ready to go. Neuron 7 is schema-less architecture and work within any system of record of your choice.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I agree, right? I think the one thing I was talking to a IoT consultant at Field Service Palm Springs, and he was like, "What's your idea about about digital transformation?" I was like, "Other than the fact that it ruined technicians' lives for like 4 years," I was like, other than that, no. And he was like, "What do you mean?" And that's what we just kept adding tool on top of tool. And like you said, in
So,
every department that wanted new information, they gave us a new data collection tool or a new thing to do, especially in healthcare and technology with automation. So it was interesting, just to see that dynamic, and then to get into a VP seat to say like, look, my technicians are using like 16 different applications. How can I narrow this down to four or three, or how many of them are absolutely necessary? So I see we have a few questions coming in, and I see our lab assistant about to work. So Janessa, if you wanna throw one up on the screen, and then we'll take care of a few. So from Kevin, what about those techs that are skeptics, the ones that are fearful to adopt new technology? So I'll take that one. That's
Yeah,
my
you
favorite
could do
topic. Um, with that, Kevin, I would say, and I've always been an advocate of this, like use your detractors as the champions. Right? I think we tend to like avoid the people that we know are negative, but and honestly, like 20, 40, 50, sometimes half the time they're right. Right? So they might be ornery, they might be cynical, but if you can actually convince the detractor and then have them be the one that carries the story, to our point earlier about the value of the tool, that's what you want to start with, right? And like, and I could throw out names right now from a previous life. Like, I was flying that person in if we needed to do something new, because, and now you don't want people that are just kind of cantankerous, but people who are curious, who are knowledgeable, who have a lot of experience, and who are the ones that everyone is already calling. Because if you're not going to take phone calls off of their day, if you're not going to take text messages off their day with a new rollout, then that's why they're not going to adopt it, because you keep evolving the organization, but their role isn't changing as the expert. Because as Nikan said earlier, we haven't figured out how to pull that stuff out of their brain. So what you do is you take those people who are normally your experts, that's why they're more skeptical, and have them pour what they know into the device so that people don't have to keep pinging them. And then you actually highlight them. And we talked about the N7 champions, like they become the people that you highlight, not because they're the most interpersonal, not because they're the nicest, but because they actually contribute a lot of value to the accuracy of the intelligence that the organization would be putting it out there. So
and they
yeah,
should be celebrated, right? So
yep,
they should be. Neuron 7, if it does understand who is contributing the most to the enterprise, we should be pulling that, giving that to HR, giving to that, to their boss, and making champions out of them. So that's what we're attempting to do next. So
yeah. All right. Next question. Would it be possible to expand a bit more on the next likely error intelligence? What sort of inputs can be exercised for the prediction model? I'll
yeah,
let the AI master handle that.
yeah,
There you
yeah.
go, Nikin.
Yeah, no, I think so. The next likely error, if you think about first-time fix revisits, are a lot of times, including in the tech support world, just not in the field service world, not going back to that particular asset for the next 60, 90, 120 days is a big metric that a lot of our VPs get incented on. That is a big metric from a customer satisfaction perspective. So what we have done is, as soon as we give you the resolution path and you basically solve a particular issue, while the service engineer is working on it, while the customer support person has the customer on the call, we immediately pop in, hey, here is the next likely error that is going to that is most likely happening on this particular appliance or device. It's a prediction that we use a lot of clustering mechanisms to kind of come in and predict for you. And then as soon as that comes true, right, you go and get the resolution pathway for that as well. And the idea there is, of course, we want to influence more first-time fix. It's you spend the time and energy to go look at this particular issue. You may as well solve the next one that is in line. But it's also something that recognizes the fact that it's a one to many scenario. You don't just go in and find one issue and solve it. Once you solve a particular issue, a lot of times the next one then comes in, and then the next one comes in. You are going in and solving a host of things around a particular asset to fix it. And we recognize that, and we are again building the product in a way that can guide you not just on one resolution, but also the next set of issues to keep the uptime of that particular device up and running. And the same thing is true in the tech support center as it's true for field service or even engineering for that matter.
All right, appreciate it. And I think we had one more question, Janessa, from Nicole, I believe. All right, so Nicole says, shared a poll earlier about onboard times. How much time could Neuron save to get new hires up to speed? And this will
Yeah.
be our last question. Nikin, if you wanna take a first shot at it, and then I'll kind of give my opinion as well on what like the practitioner's responsibility is on that side, and then we can close out.
Yeah, we are doing a very detailed job of the before and after for Neuron 7. So we go in and give a quote to a customer only after we deeply understand what ROI are they expecting from Neuron 7. And onboarding time comes up a lot of times. So we have a pretty good view now across all customers, across all metrics, and we can kind of distill it and say, in the med device world or in the industrial equipment world or in the high tech world, this is typically the onboard timing, and this is how we are influencing it between the 6 to 8 months, which is a typically onboard. When you are able to go touch a particular device yourself, we are bringing that down by a factor, by a huge magnitude, where people are trusting new technicians to go in a matter of 3 to 4 months, even faster sometimes with Neuron 7. So we are cutting that down significantly, and it's one of the big ROI metrics that we are delivering so far. And we now have enough conviction because we have this data across so many different companies. Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think the responsibility kind of falls on to us as the practitioners, because it's really going to be how do we change our requirements for what does training actually mean, right? Like what does training look like? Because if we still keep the same training pathway that I want you to know 95% of scenarios, it's going to be the same length, even though we have a tool that can get you to 90% resolution. So I think companies just have to kind of adjust their line of confidence of, like a junior technician can navigate, they can do basic maintenance. We taught them how to do an installation. They understand the technology. They know how to navigate the tool, and let them off the leash and just let them go. Um, and I've been, background in business education, training in the military. That's always been my thing. Like I would honestly not make people go through the entire program. Like if somebody was confident and got to a point to where they were like, you know what, I've got it, I've got the tools, and I'm like, let them go, right? Like let them off the leash and let them get out there. And so I think it's a level of, right. It's how do you measure as an organization the technician's confidence, because you can train them with information all day, but there's something intrinsic to them where
Yeah.
they've got to feel confident enough based on what you've equipped them with. And I think that's the overall goal. And we don't have to put it up. And Nick, and I'll let you in with this. Anthony asked the question, which was, does Neuron 7 have a dedicated resource to help executive customers sell Neuron 7 internally down through their organization, right? Down to operators and technicians to increase adoption. So like and I think everybody probably has that question, right? Because if that's the ultimate value, like how do you all structure that from a sales and onboarding process to help people sell it down through the organization?
Yeah, we are an AI as a service business. That's one more thing that we decided that's new. We're not just selling you a product and then having somebody else to go do all the work of making the implementation work. And the customer success team at our end is kind of a technical account management team, but they're working very closely with our customers to ensure that adoption is watched. The queries that are going wrong are watched. We're literally doing that on a daily basis for every single one of our customers, where technology wise how we can help, adoption wise how we can help. So we are tied at the hip throughout the course of the contract, so to speak. And if you look at our customers and talk to them, you will see that they will absolutely agree with our approach is AI as a service, which is implementation, deployment, helping with the user adoption and the product all rolled into one, tied at the hip to deliver the value that we promise you.
Appreciate that. And then you always have wonderful people like Roy who are more than happy to give you some advice and some information in support of Neuron 7. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Nikin. Everyone who's here. I know we ran a few minutes over, but it was a really good conversation. Thank you for the 13 people that are still here hanging in and probably late to your next meeting. We will have another one that will be the end of July. So start looking for that so you can register. We'll have another conversation around service strategy and things that we can do to just kind of help kind of improve the industry overall on how we're tackling service issues. So thanks for joining us today. This is the Service Strategy Labs. I'm Roy Dockery. Thanks, Neekin, Neuron7, and our wonderful lab assistants for helping us execute today. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, everyone. Always a pleasure,
Thank
Roy.
you.
Thank, bye.